Hello people of YouTube, my name is Brad, this is my channel Animate Orange, and welcome to the review video for this Deadpool model we have here from Metal Earth, this fairly sizable Deadpool model with a lot of color and a fair amount of detail, and of course a unicorn, because I don't really know that much about Deadpool. I have watched the two movies. I've not read any of the comics. I know he's known to break the fourth wall, known to be a bit silly. I'm not sure what the unicorn stands for, but from what little I know, that figures. I understand he likes chimichangas, not because he likes to eat them, but because he likes the way they sound, the way the word sounds, chimichanga. So yeah, I don't know much about him, but I know that this is a pretty nice model right here. And where am I going to start with this review? I'm going to start by pointing out, and I'm moving slower now, and it's been a little while since I built this model, but I've had a recent refresher going over the videos and finishing editing, and I do take notes as I build the things I want to comment on. This comes on the heels of the Hogwarts Castle, which was a long build. I don't remember how many hours. It was a very long build. It was complicated. It wasn't bad, but it was intense to a point, and there was a lot to it, and it drug out, and it was challenging. It was a very challenging build. And then to come from that model to this made this seem really easy. At least I think that's what's going on, because it definitely seemed like an easy build. Looking back, it took 4 hours to put this together, which really isn't too bad. 4 hours isn't too bad for a model build these days, for Metal Earth, from a newer one. But it didn't even seem like 4 hours. It seemed like 2 hours. It seemed like it took me no time at all to put this together. Most of the stuff came together fairly easily. There was some amount of hand shaping. We've got body parts here, arms and legs, which are not cylindrical like a robot. They are tapered. They get thicker here and thinner there. They're not smooth. The body is like that. And that was a little bit more to shaping it there. But it all came together fairly well. I did have some issues, but overall those issues were not that big a deal. I think probably the biggest issue was part 42. In 42, I believe it was this arm here. There's like an extra shoulder piece. On this arm over here, this shoulderish piece that ends up connecting is part of the arm. There's no getting it backwards. But over here on this arm, there's an extra piece, piece 42, that attaches between the arm and the body. It's kind of a shoulder piece. The thing is, the way the instructions are laid out, it is a little bit confusing, because they show shaping the part into more or less a circle. And the way they show it, it has the seam, the connecting point, kind of up at an angle. But then the way it attaches to the body, or to the arm, it's not clear if that seam stays in the same place or it twists down. It almost looks like it turns down. It's not clear enough for me, and I had difficulty with that. And what I believe happened is I put 42 onto the arm at the wrong place. Like, it's supposed to be here, but I attached it slightly turned. So when it came time to actually attach the arm to the body, the tabs wouldn't line up. I know this is supposed to be, the thumb is supposed to be up here like it is, but it was not attaching in the right orientation. So I spent a lot of time realizing that it's probably that shoulder piece put on wrong, because the tabs are not evenly spaced within the slots, and they didn't seem to be working right. So I figured I'd probably misaligned it, so I took it off and tried to shift it and put it back on, and it was a bit of a struggle, because it was a fight to get it off. And then once I got it off, I'm like, which way did I get it off? And now which way do I put it back? So there was some trial and error, and I thought I got it, and I got the arm back on. And then at one point, you got these shoulder pad pieces here that's like the last thing you put on, and they connect with two tabs, and they didn't seem like the tabs were lined up right. So I ended up taking it off again and trying to realign it and put it back on. I'm not sure that I actually shifted anything. I think what ended up happening is I put it back on more or less the same way and just kind of worked the two tabs into their slots. It made it difficult. It wasn't perfectly clear how to orient that part. And I did my best, and I don't think my best was good enough, and I made modifications, and I eventually worked it out. I'm here. The arm is in what looks to be the right spot, the shoulder pad is on. I eventually worked it out, but it wasn't an easy process to get to, and that was probably the hardest, almost definitely the hardest part of this build, which for you, if you get it right from the first time, or if you interpret the directions better than I did, you get it right the first time, it's not even going to be an issue for you. It's going to come right together. Speaking of alignment, there were some, not issues, but some things to pay attention to. You've got all these little belt packs around here, and there's a couple on the leg down here. The instructions do kind of indicate like a highlighted area to orient how you're folding and attaching it. And it seems like if you're looking on the back side of the piece, not the front colored side, but the back side, almost too close here, the back side, I should be doing it this way. Instead of the front colored side with the pieces that fold in, you're looking at the back side. That one flap has like a funny engraving on the back side. Seems to correspond with how they're showing. There's like a highlighted part of the instructions, and I matched up with that and oriented the part that way when I folded it, and in the end, you know, the pouches do look to be right side up. Most of them it doesn't seem to matter too much, but well, it does. If you look really closely, and I'll try to get a close-up picture, you can kind of tell there's like a engraving where it's like the top part of the cover of the flap. Some are clearer than others, but it all seemed to work out by matching up that little engraving on the back inside with the highlighted part on the instruction sheets. I did have a little bit of an issue getting a part backwards on the foot. That was just me not paying attention when I put that foot on. It was clearly marked that the engraved side faces the way that it does, and I did that for the first foot. I didn't do it for the second, and I had to flip it over, something like that. And that was me being a goof. I did have some struggles with all of these straps. He's got several different things wrapped around parts of his body. He's got this waist strap, you've got the two gun holsters, you've got like a thigh strap, you've got the knife. See, it's only on one side. Yeah, you got the knife down here on the bottom of the leg, and you've got this shoulder strap piece that connects to the belt. And most of those pieces was a bit of a struggle to wrap it around and get the tabs to connect. Doable. There was a lot of shifting and trying to line parts up, and just a little bit of a fight to get it on there, but I got it in the end. And like I said, those were a struggle, but not the biggest struggle. That shoulder piece was the biggest struggle. And then the strap itself, the shoulder strap, not a big struggle to get it on, but I did have to, because it's at an angle, the tabs are flat, I had to kind of twist the tab a little bit to get the piece to slide over, or the slot to slide over the tab and get it connected. Not a big deal. But I'm pointing out the difficult parts. Honestly, there weren't that many. A lot of hand shaping, some struggle getting these pieces wrapped around and connected because it's kind of a tight fit. The shoulder piece was a pain in the butt, and just make sure, I always say this, make sure you're paying attention to the instructions and how things are oriented, and feel free to look ahead to make sure you're on the right track rather than making the mistake and having to go back and fixing it. I'm getting pretty good at fixing my mistakes, both fortunately and unfortunately, but the better option is to try not to put yourself in that position by looking ahead. All in all, with the struggles that I mentioned, this model came together fairly easily, especially in comparison with the Hogwarts Castle and Snow. But still, I mean, even compared to Iron Man was quite a struggle back in the day. This came together easier than that. It just took a while to get all the parts together, I guess, and I enjoyed it enough that I lost track of time and didn't realize I had spent 4 hours building this model. So, in the end, fantastic model. Absolutely loved it. So how does Deadpool compare to the older Iron Man model? Well, here you go. Base to base, you can see that Iron Man is shorter, Deadpool is taller. So I am impressed that I remember this back in the day being a big deal and a challenging, like, expert model, especially compared to what was out at the time. This was something else. And then now, quite some time later, we have this guy, which I would say was definitely easier to do than Iron Man, even taller, also a Metal Earth model. They've come a long way in what they're able to do. Now, perhaps that is also because the Iron Man armor is more layered and complicated, and so that changes things, and this is just a bodysuit. Maybe they've just gotten better at designing things. I don't know. But yeah, this was so much easier than this. Still, both fantastic models. Loved doing both of them. This one was way more of a challenge. This one, in comparison, not too bad. And compared to today's models, I've watched Metal Earth models get more challenging and complicated over the years, and this is not that bad. Pretty nice model. If you're a Marvel fan and you're fairly new, I mean, if you got a little experience under your belt, that's helpful. This is a decent one to go with. I'd do this before I did Iron Man, just to build your experience up, because Iron Man is still going to be more and War Machine too. War Machine is just about as complex as Iron Man. So yeah. And I do like to do this thing at the end of the video where I look back and say, is there anything, or ask myself, if I had this model to do over with, is there any... I do like to do this thing towards the end of the video, of the review video, where I like to look back and say, if I had this to do again, what would I do differently? And the one thing, probably already guessed it, that stands out is to try and be more careful with this shoulder piece. I believe it's, again, 42. I would, I don't even know that there's anything I could do differently, but maybe try harder to understand how that part is supposed to attach and get it right the first time. I guess the one thing would be try to pay more attention to how the tabs are distanced from each other, because I don't think they're evenly distanced, and that might have been a clue that I missed. I still managed to get it on wrong, even though, but because it's a curved shape and an odd shape, that's definitely possible. But pay closer to attention to how those tabs line up before putting that on, and maybe that would have solved the little bit of a headache I had later with getting that arm on, and might have been a 3.5 hour build instead of a 4 hour build. As far as looking back and doing things differently, that's not a big one, which attests to how much easier this model is to do than some of the older ones. I'd say that's probably the weak point in the instructions, just not having that clearly shown how that lines up. And I've done models recently, I think it was the Hogwarts Castle, where they had indications engraved into the models to help you know how the things line up. I mean, even in Deadpool, they kind of had some engravings on the back of those pouches to help you know how things are lined up. So they just kind of missed the spot right there. Not too bad. Not too bad at all. Fun model. Great addition to the Marvel lineup. Love the color on it. Love the added details and all the pouches and whatnot. The swords on the back, fantastic. Not too hard to do. Looked just absolutely amazing. The head, the face and head was a lot easier to shape than I was expecting. I've had so much trouble with shaping faces. Like C-3PO I've done a couple of times now, because you have the independent model and you have the one where it's C-3PO and R2-D2 together. And the C-3PO, the first time I did it, went fairly easily. The second time I struggled really bad, and I think I broke a tab, and both times ended up breaking off the little antenna on his head that you're not supposed to break off. I broke it both times. But Deadpool came together, just take time, shape the parts, came right together, no big deal. Really, really well done. So, fantastic model. I think I'm going to leave it at that. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. It's a pretty short review video compared to some of the ones that I've done. But there's just not a lot to say, because there's not a lot to warn you about. If you've got some experience with these models, and you've built more than 10 at this point, you're probably going to be fine. Just take your time, follow the directions, look ahead. If you get frustrated, take a break. If you need help, I've got 2 build videos out on it, a part 1 and a part 2. Go check it out. Part 1 is basically the legs, and part 2 is the top half. So whatever you're having trouble with, check it out. Hopefully that'll help. Ask some questions. I'll do what I can to get back to you. And as always, thank you for watching, and keep on keeping on.